But my current project is called P.T. Barnum, The Lost Legend. And has anyone ever heard the name? I'm just curious to kind of get a read on the audience here. Who has just heard the name P.T. Barnum? Just heard of P.T. Barnum. And it's okay if you haven't. I really want to get an honest gauge. Okay, so it's more than half of the room at least heard of P.T. Barnum. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I was in the same boat. I had just heard of him. Okay, so I thought it would be interesting to kind of do an overview of Barnum. Before I went into the project. Now, keeping in mind, I really knew jack about this guy. I knew nothing. This is Bethel, Connecticut, and I was driving through in the summer, and I saw the elephant painted there. I saw P.T. Barnum Square. Again, he was still just kind of a cliche to me. The name didn't resonate. And you know, there's this town green called P.T. Barnum Square, but in the center of it, there's a soldier holding a grenade. It didn't make sense. So I started to kind of get into it, and I saw that it's sort of like, I don't know how to say this without getting too weird or anything, but it sort of came to me. I was just surfing around on the internet, and this story about Bethel just literally jumped off the page. This is the New York Times. I only read the internet version. I don't read the paper version. And I was reading the story that the town of Bethel was going to be building a life-size statue of P.T. Barnum. Why were they going to be doing that? So I kind of called around. I was looking for my next feature-length film project. I said, does anybody know this David Gesualdi? It turns out his name is Gesualdi. And they said, yeah, you know. So I dropped a couple names. I called them up, and I said, would you be interested in having a documentary filmed about you? So I basically kind of cold called him on the phone. We had a meeting. This is our first meeting. And you can kind of see in his eyes here, I don't really have any rapport with him yet. You know, I haven't built trust yet. Okay, this is someone I'm going to be spending the next year with, and this isn't over the summer. He's like, all right, you know, I'll let this guy in with his camera. It's a very, it's a very personal thing to give that much of yourself on film. Obviously, the end of the story here is that we've got a great relationship now, but this is the beginning. I can talk a little bit about that tiny little Barnum is obviously not going to be the life-size statue, but that's how it starts out. You build a small one first, and then you enlarge it, and I have some pictures of that. So David said, yes, we'll give it a shot. So I said, fine, and I just got in my car, and I wanted to know, what are the things that remain in the state of Connecticut that have Barnum's name on it? Things that I can actually see, because no one that knew him is alive anymore. So I got in my car. That's the Barnum Museum in Bridgeport on the top left. Anybody been there? Driven by it? There's a mummy in there? Boy, yeah, you guys, that's probably how you know Barnum, right? A little bit? Yeah, yeah. And there's a mummy in there. They're doing some stuff with that. This is his grave. He's buried in Bridgeport. He actually built the cemetery. I kind of like his gravestone. There's a center monument. There's people buried all around it, but the little one in the bottom left corner says, "Not my will, but thine be done," which is a passage from the Bible. It's actually kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing saying, I didn't want to die, but I had to, so there you go. Not my will, but thine be done. And you can see it. There's no admission. You can just go to the cemetery and hang out with the Barnum's bones if you want to, if you're into that kind of thing. This is General Tom Thumb, who's buried a very short distance from Barnum. That's his actual size. In fact, I think on the screen it's actually larger than he really was. He was very small. That's a life-size replica of him on the top of his monument. This is just a little plaque talking about the joy of uncovering additional information. This statue on the top was actually destroyed by vandals in this little plaque talks about it. And this is actually a replacement from the original one. Kind of sad people are doing that. In September, I kind of started heavy filming. This is David. He's building the frame of what's going to be the life-size Barnum statue. And I started to get into it. I said, okay, Barnum was interesting. His buildings were catching on fire. I didn't quite understand that. Every building that this guy had eventually burned down. I thought, no, that's just not just a coincidence. Well, Barnum was alive during the Civil War, and the South had spies that would come up here and burn down buildings. Barnum was very against slavery. This man here, this is in Torrington. His name was John Brown. He's generally credited as the martyr to start the Civil War. He was insane. Quentin Tarantino said that he would love to play this guy in a movie. I could totally see it. It was just him and like 5 guys, and they stormed a military installation, and it was like, what are you doing? You know, and he died, and they hung him and the whole thing. But he was born here in Connecticut. There's a lot of history here. So it's just in the middle of the woods in Torrington. You got to know where it is, but you can visit it. Barnum, a lot of religious motivation you'll see in the 1800s, but Barnum loved this guy because America was so captivated by him. He had a giant wax statue of this guy in his museum in New York City, and anything John Brown would get the crowds in there. So there's a correlation. This is a photo of what this, obviously before it burned down. This thing was incredible. It's a shame that it's gone, but it's down across from Trinity Church, southern part of New York City. It's replaced by, I think, a bank or something now. I haven't visited yet, but I probably will. But just imagine in the day, you know, the lines of people, and that was your entertainment. You went to this thing. There were people in there. There was a human museum. They had conjoined twins, Siamese twins, because they were from Siam. He invented the term Siamese twins. Tom Thumb was in there. A lot of stuffed animals and things like that, but there was some cool stuff in there. And it burned down, so it was all lost. In October, I finally got to, for the first time, go to the Foundry where with David. Still kind of new to the relationship, but he was opening up to me a little bit more. And this is where I learned what the process of building a bronze statue is. You actually make it out of clay, and then the Foundry turns that clay into a wax copy, and then the wax copy gets covered in this hard stuff like a rock, and they melt the wax out of it, and the wax is gone. So it's called the lost wax technique. And then they fill that cavity where the wax was with bronze, and then they crack the shell away. So each stage of this, it's an incredible process, but every monument you see in America is built this way. Plaster, clay, melt the wax away, bronze. It's incredible. Somebody, they're trying to raise money to build the statue, and it was unexpected, but someone actually commissioned David to make the small version for their home. So that was kind of cool. He got couple $1,000 to do that. So after, this is interesting. On the left here, you'll see the tiny little version with that big swing arm there, and the big version. He's scaling the small one. That's basically a ruler. He's scaling the small one to be giant size. And this will eventually be the bronze statue. Initially, I thought, well, what do they just pour bronze over the clay, right? They just slowly pour it over. It's not. It's a solid cast piece of steel that'll withstand 100-mile-an-hour gusts of winds, and you know, it's just really fascinating. So I like this one. He looks like he has jazz hands, spirit fingers. Yeah. So my research is kind of expanding. This is a statue. Even back in Barnum's day, there was controversy about the way that animals were treated in the circus. I mean, you have to train these animals. They don't naturally know to do what they do. And the ASPCA was created, the American Society for the Prevention of the Cruelty to Animals, and this guy was his name was Henry Berg, was constantly on Barnum's case about it. Eventually they became friends. Barnum won him over, and they were really close. And Barnum built this statue, and it's in Bridgeport today. You could drive by it, and you wouldn't even know what it was. But it was sort of Barnum's way of thanking him for recognizing that animals need proper care as well. Another sad story, though, is that the horse, same thing as the little Tom Thumb, it's a replacement. Somebody destroyed the horse, so they have to put. Keep in mind, these statues, they're at least a couple hundred years old, so it's amazing they're still standing, but they are. This is the existing statue that's in Bridgeport of P.T. Barnum. He sat for it while he was alive, but they didn't install it until a couple years after he died. So he saw it being created. But what's interesting, again, about the discovery and the joy of learning things and you know, uncovering the stones that need to be unturned, if you look on the top left, you'll see 4 little pedestals, and they're nice and clean. You also see that it's basically a concrete face. There's like a concrete face there to it. This is bronze. This was made the same way. It was out of clay, turned to wax, then the bronze was poured into it. I went to eBay. eBay is great. If you're doing research, you can go to eBay and type in what it is that you want to see. People sell